So when you root yourself in your commitment and you stay grounded in your commitment, it has the ability to demagnetize the distractions. If you got a weak commitment, you'll get caught up in your distractions. So the reason why most people have difficulty committing is because they don't get the value on what they're missing out of when they get caught up in their distractions. But when you're just like, you know what, I am committed to my commitments and it means this much to me, and you stay grounded in that, then outside distractions, your training doesn't hold weight.
Welcome everyone to another episode on Just Tap In. I'm your host Emilio, and today's guest is someone who truly embodies real transformation and the power of the mind. Garrain Jones has truly been through it all. Kidnapped by age 12, had a near-death experience by age 10, his father murdered by age 12, and he ended up in a juvenile detention in his teens. His criminal activities continued to escalate until he was sentenced to 12 years in a French prison for drug smuggling. Fortunately, his sentence was cut to 2 years and a half, and realizing he had been given a second chance at life, he started leading one of the most notable and extraordinary rags to riches stories in the world. He poured himself into his gifts as an entertainer and began working closely with the top music artists in the industry such as Ludacris and 2 Chainz. While all this surface level success was going on, Garrain lived out of his car and was over $200,000 in debt. This rock bottom moment led him to quit the record label and get to deep work on his mindset, even reading the book The Power of Positive Thinking over 280 times. After taking full responsibility for his life, he focused on value creation for society and built multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses and became amongst the few multi-millionaires in today's world. He has now become a premier motivational speaker, highly sought after coach, best-selling author of Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life, and even co-founder of Empowered Brotherhood, a community focused on healing masculine wounds. Don't forget to drop a like on this video and get exposed to more wisdom teachers like Garrain by subscribing to this channel. And now, without further ado, we bring you the man who learned how to tap into the artist within and share his gifts with the world, and also teach you how to do the same with Garrain Jones. Welcome to the podcast. How are you, brother?
Man, I am so great. Garrain Jones, I'm excited to be here. I'm acknowledging you for creating a space for stories like mine to be seen and heard and felt. And I'm just in a very, very, very good place in my life. My family's good. My newborn is good. Money is good. Business is good. Sex is good. My wife, me and my relationship with my wife is good. And, I'm in a really, really, really great place.
Yeah, I can feel that energy, and I know that our audience right now is feeling your enthusiasm, your joy. Man, where do I start? I mean, your story is one of the most fascinating stories that I've, heard about, read about in a long time. And, I really want to unpack some certain turning points in your life. But, before that, I actually wanted to start off maybe, acknowledging that this podcast and the intention behind it that we just said before was before recording was that I want this to be a space for the young generations to be inspired, to connect with people like you that have these amazing stories. And I wanted to hear from you, like, what do you see that's going on in the world, and what would be your opening statement for future leaders? I know you just have your newborn soul. What would be your opening statement for people that are young and trying to make a change in the world?
We can get caught up in all the stuff that's going on the surface. But something I've been taught is you can't pluck a weed from the surface, but you can pluck it from the root. And I think what's going on in the world is that our world is missing a pulse. Like a pulse on love, and a pulse, something that's connected to the heart. so many disconnected people. So I think, well, I know that when you do heart work, when you do work that infuses love into the world, impact into the world, it's like whenever you go to the doctor and there's a flat line and the person is dead, they take the little shock things and they just go boom. Every single time you put out a pulse of love and you put out work of love and you're doing heart work, impact work, building people up work, that's shocking the world back into life because we're missing a pulse. So that would be my message for anybody in the young generation, because you are the future. Once I'm gone, you'll still be here. What will you have to pass on to your kids? Getting caught up into what everybody else is, being angry about what's going on in society, or seeing the root issue is a bunch of hurt people that probably have never felt love in their life. And could you be that example to spread love in such a way that it fills up so many people and spills over into the rest of the world?
Wow.
That would be my message. I
knew you were going to say something along those lines, and I felt that. And that's why I put on this sweater I got recently. It's that heart center, because what you're just saying is so relevant in the world right now, and so relevant also in my personal journey. As I just came back, I told you, from a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat, and I spent the whole week leaning into my heart and opening that heart, because I know from your story as well that, we share that when we are attached to resentment from things in our life, things in our past, this heart center just starts closing, and it starts closing up. And then we have to actually put the conscious effort to open it up again. I wanted to start unpacking your story a little bit and, letting you tell the stories of when that heart started to close and when it started to flower back up again and open back up.
Yeah, my heart started to close when when I wasn't doing anything that I loved in my life, when I was surrounding myself around people that weren't doing anything that they loved. I think it was when I found myself in a community of people that were doing more harm in the world than they were good. And, you typically are the people that you surround yourself around the most. And so my heart started closing the more and more I hung out with people who didn't use their heart. They're using more of their head.
Yeah.
And then and that's when I was living in my car. That's when I wanted to commit suicide. That's when I was broke in thought and in money and in spirit. And my heart started opening when I started getting healthy. I joined a healthy, active lifestyle community. They were doing different things, saying different things. Their approach to life was completely different. And by nature, the way I see it, community is like a form of language. Yeah. If you want to learn French, you don't go to listen to Rosetta Stone by yourself at Coffee Bean for 1 week at a time. What you do is, if you really want to learn French, I'd say go be amongst the culture, be amongst the community, go to France, eat their food, be amongst the people. You'll not only learn the language, but you'll learn the dialect. You'll learn the energy behind the words. It's the same thing when you join a different network and a different community. So my heart started to open when I surrounded myself around people whose heart was open. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So I just started doing what they were doing. They were talking about making a difference in the world. They were talking about wanting to retire their mom. When somebody would leave the room, they wouldn't talk behind their back. They were building them up. And so I'd never been exposed to that kind of community. So just by the way of the people that I was hanging out with online and offline, that supported my heart in opening up, because I felt safe to open up. And when you don't feel safe in your nervous system open up, you won't. It'll be fight or flight response. But when you're in a network of people, when you're in a safe environment, you tend to show who you really are.
Yeah, and I also learned that the heart is really like the bridge between this plane, the 3D, the earth, and the cosmos. And I know you have a very spiritual background in the way you look at life. Where did that philosophy or seeing the world through that lens start coming up for you?
as I connect the dots looking backwards,
Mm.
kind of always been there.
Yeah.
But like, when I was a little kid, people would be like, oh, that we're the only ones here. This is the planet Earth. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me, and I would always ask questions. Out of all these planets, we're the only entities here. That doesn't seem right to me. So I would look up at the stars. People were looking at cartoons. I was looking at the stars. I'd be like, maybe there's somebody else or something else on another planet asking the same thing. Maybe we're not the only ones. So at an early age, I always knew that there was more, and I would ask questions to the adults, and they'd give me this generic answer. And I got labeled hard of hearing. I got labeled a dunce. I got labeled just, you don't listen to anybody. But ultimately, what that was happening when I was a little kid was the adults trying to train me to think like them. And most people have very vague level of thinking. But since I was hard of hearing, I never gave anybody the right to train my way of thinking, because I was always hard of hearing and I never really would listen to people. So I guess I was unconsciously fighting for my own freedom and for the things that I got talked about when I was a little kid, the same thing that makes me millions of dollars as an adult and people respect me for. It's less about the money, but my value in the world is because of the way that I think. That's not the way that I was domesticated as a child.
There's this quote I read recently. I put it up on social media. It's, the future of the world will be built by adults who are able to see the world through the children's eyes.
That's so good.
It's exactly what you're saying. And the transformation coaching that you do in the world, whether it's one-on-one or you're giving talks, it's a lot around bringing people back to that child in the earliest phases of their life. And I wanted to really let you unpack why that's so key and why, going back to that inner child, how can we start seeing these patterns in our life and try to fix that from the roots instead of from the surface level?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I've coined this phrase. Well, I didn't coin the phrase. I coined the phrase for me. Awaken the artist within. And I feel that every kid is an artist. Every adults are deteriorated children. If you take it back to the kid, every kid was born an artist. And it doesn't have to be painting or running or jumping. Your life is a work of art. So another word for inner child is an artist. And I have this thing called artist power. Artist power is when you tap in to the essence of what used to spark joy inside of you. When you tap into like what really drives all 50 trillion cells in your body, 50,000 trillion cells in your body, whatever the number is. And I call it artist power. When you're operating from the truest essence of your heart, when you're getting downloads, when you're being able to tap in. And I feel that most people don't know it's just a reminder of your work in the world when you're getting downloads and you're tapping in. So I call it artist power. And it matters a lot to me to work with people so that I can remind them of what their soul already knows, is that there's an artist inside of you. And the more and more you do things that's not connected to the artist, the further and further away you get from your true mission and your true purpose in life. And so my mission is to support people to really retrieving the artist inside of them so they can use their natural born gifts to produce extraordinary results in their lives and really create a meaningful life, which is really difficult if you're not honoring the heart space. The heart is the most powerful frequency in the world. So if you're not operating from those waves of the heart, like it's beating for a reason. So I literally say, The heart is knocking, saying, use me, use me, use me. And if you go long enough where you're not using your heart, maybe it just says, nobody's home, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah. And it's just another muscle that we have to train.
Yes.
The heart.
So the inner child work is more about getting people to connect with the artist inside of them so that they can use their gifts and create a meaningful life.
Yeah. I resonate with so much of that. I mean, the name of this podcast is Just Tap In. So a lot of it has come from the idea of going within yourself and finding what truly brings out that joy, that freedom, that childlike spirit. Like I don't want anyone to ever lose that. And I feel like I lost it for such a long time. And when I started getting into like personal development, listening to podcasts, things like that, I reconnected with this source of curiosity that I've been leading with for the past 2 years, and which has led me to be able to have these conversations, learn new things, be in awe of other people's lives. And this energy of joy and freedom was actually what led you to get out of jail earlier than you were supposed to. If you don't mind telling us that story.
Now that I know, I didn't know it while I was in it, because you can't see the picture while you're in the frame. But I was serving a 12-year sentence from 2003 to 2005. I was in prison in France, and I never thought I was going to get out. And I remember before I went to prison, I used to always say, I feel like I'm so far away from where I'm supposed to be. I feel like I'm in jail inside of my own body, to the point where I literally manifested being in prison in Europe, so far away from where I was supposed to be, inside of a prison. And I remember watching Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption, which is a movie that's based out of prison. Yeah. And he had a quote, he had a statement in there: they can take anything they want away from me, but they can't take away my mind. And in that moment, I became a free man, because I realized that I put myself in a prison. And if I can put myself in a prison while I was free, then I can take myself out of prison. Yeah. So in that moment, I became a free man, and nobody could take that away from me, because they couldn't take away my mind. So I said, what would a free person do? And I remembered that I used to love art, to do art, visual arts, when I was a little kid. It brought me so much joy. So I started doing art, and inmates, I was painting portraits of their family, and they would cry and say, thank you so much. And in my head, I was like, I just want you to be happy, because I was already happy because I was doing what I loved. And I remembered that I love to sing. Every time I sing, it just makes my soul feel free. And an inmate said, every time you sing, it makes me feel free. So I would just sing every night. And then I wanted to run. A little voice inside is, Garrain, run. You love to run. Because when I was a little kid, running made me feel free. So I started running. And in 30 days, 68 or 62 inmates were running with me. So imagine, nobody was running before. Drug deals, people stabbing each other, people fighting every day. I start running, less drug deals, less stabbings, less fighting. And then 60 something inmates were running with me, when 30 days before there was no running. And it's called value creation, when you're painting the world with something that you love.
Yeah.
But as a child, these are original loves for me. I didn't learn this later on. I've always loved it. So if you take a container and then you pour into that container, it'll eventually spill over into the next container, and then so on and so forth. So let's just say, while I was in prison, I was a container that was always empty. And when I started doing what I loved, I poured into that container over and over and over, but it was my own internal container. That spilled over into the inmates. The inmates started doing things that they loved. That spilled over into the prison. Well, guess what? When a container overflows and it's too big for the container that it's in, it overflows into the next container. So whatever I poured inside of myself was too big for the container called prison. And this is me, of course, as I connect the dots looking back on my life. But when the container of value is too big for the space that you're in, it will find another container to overflow in. Well, it's too big for prison. So I believe that the next container was freedom. So when I embodied all the characteristics of freedom, I didn't have to think about free. There's people right now, they're like, oh, I'm fighting for freedom. You're taking away my freedom. No one can take away your freedom. You want to know how I know? Because in losing my freedom, I actually found my freedom while in prison across the seas. So no one can take away your freedom. If you have internal freedom, then you'll always be free. Here's what happened. I got busted for 6.2 kilos of heroin, smuggling drugs from one country to another.
You were my age at that time. You were 23.
Yeah.
24. Yeah.
They tested those drugs 3 times. But when I felt free 2 years later, I felt free. They called me into the office and they said, Jones, we retested the drugs. And instantly in my mind, I was like, why are you retesting the drugs? You already tested it, 6.2 kilos of heroin. We retested the drugs. 90% were fake. And for the amount that was real, you've already done the time. You're free to go home.
Wow.
So in hindsight, what that told me was, when you embody the characteristics, when you embody, meaning you see yourself free and you're backing that up with action. When you embody the characteristics of freedom, your life follows you.
Yeah. And I believe, first of all, that's such a crazy story. When I first heard that, I actually applied it directly to my life because I was going through, of course, not something to that extreme, but I was in a situation where I felt tied down and wasn't able to fully express what I love to do. And
which is a form of prison.
Exactly.
Mentally.
Mental prison, 100%. And I think on a metaphysical level, what happened there was that by changing your inner state of being, the frequency, the vibration surrounding you was no longer in alignment to the environment that you were in. So you basically shifted a dimension to a reality where you were no longer in prison. I learned that recently in this retreat with Joe Dispenza was we went through an exercise called changing the boxes. And I took this situation in my life where I was, in a business partnership trying to get out of, negotiations back and forth. It wasn't going anywhere. And before the retreat, I'm like, this is not going to get solved in like the next year. I'm done. Like, I don't know what else to do. And going through that exercise, we were really put in the place of what does it feel like to have a reality where there's a solution to that problem or that situation. And we were just really put into that state of feeling freedom, feeling whatever it is outside of that situation that we were in right now. And a week later, things got solved. And now, it literally manifested as freedom in my reality. So I applied that story to my personal life. And I feel like anyone listening to this can actually do that. And I also want to let you talk about the power of feeling, the power of being in that state of being where you're no longer anchored to past emotions or emotions that are keeping you in a lower frequency.
Yeah, man, well, most people aren't aware. So it's like, it's difficult to change what you're not aware of. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I went to the dentist. I had to go get a root canal. My face was like the size of Thanos's. And the specialist said, whoever originally did, because I couldn't understand why I needed to get a root canal on something that already had a root canal, because I had one 15 years prior. And the specialist said, whoever originally did your root canal didn't get it all the way to the root. So you have 15 years worth of infection that is showing up on the surface. And in terms of dentistry, you have 2 football fields worth of infection inside of your mouth. So I had to pay 2 times the price, 2 times the money because I didn't have insurance. They sawed half my jaw open. And that's when I had a huge epiphany. Wow, I've been trying to change things from the surface instead of figuring out the root cause of it. So for me, anytime something happens or a certain sadness, I always ask myself, what's my earliest memory of that sadness? Oh, it's when my dad didn't show up to my football games or my track. He always said he was going to show up, but he never did. And it always let me down. So whatever your earliest emotion is, it's always attached to a person. And I always ask people, have you forgiven that person? Oh yeah, I've forgiven them. But have you forgiven that person from the eyes of the little kid that was hurt? Yeah, from the adult, that's easy to do. But from the emotions and the eyes of the little kid. So you might have to think back to the moment you were let down. And then say, I'm releasing all emotions from this point. And Dad, I forgive you. You didn't know any better. You were doing the best that you could. And I'm letting go of resentment. And then forgiving yourself. And inside of that space of forgiveness and letting go of resentment, it creates a blank slate. When you have a blank slate, you can paint anything that you want. So from the eyes of the little kid, you look into your future, which is where you are now, and you say, I'm creating the possibility of living a life of fulfillment and abundance, of living a life where I'm making lots of magic and miracles happen, but from the eyes of the little kid. Therefore, you sever the ties of your past so that you don't have to keep recreating the same future from your past. You allow your future to pull you in, your possibility to pull you into the future, but not if you're being tagged down or bogged down by something that you're not even aware of from your past.
And through theories from like quantum physics, they say that our past, present, and future is all happening in this eternal now. Like there's this now moment. And if you're able to, I actually did that really shortly ago with someone who's able to bring you back towards your earliest childhood memories, because it's a process. Like I would say that for anyone hearing this, trying to do that on our own, I don't know how, maybe I'll allow you to step in right now, but you know, going back to those earlier childhood memories, we usually block them out. You know, when they're too painful, we block them out. So we don't really remember, or we can't even see what happened to us when we were on the playground getting bullied or whatever memory we had. Like, how do you actually return to that moment on a practical level?
I mean, well, it definitely takes awareness. It takes me, I choose to surround myself around people who are always doing that. I'm always looking for accountability. I invest in a coach, and you know, it's always good to have someone in your life that can pull out of you what you can't pull out of yourself. Like I said before, you can't see the picture while you're in the frame. And so this is, for me, this is why I design courses. This is why I lead retreats. This is why I do one-on-ones. Like right now, if you go to my website, GarrainJones.com, I have a program called Get Unstuck. It's a 7-week breakthrough accelerator course. And, you know, people are like, well, what's it about? Well, when I lived in my car, when I had no money, when I lived in my storage unit, when I went to prison, I was able to go back and extract the 7 things that was present that I was doing in all of those rock bottom moments that had me pull myself out of that. So my 7-week breakthrough accelerator course has all 7 principles that I've had. So it's important to surround yourself around the environment, or at least have a coach or someone in your life that can support you in gaining the awarenesses and holding you accountable so that you can move out of the space that you're in. That's why they don't put first graders in 5th grade. You're operating at a first grade level, but you have a teacher that's teaching you how to get to the next level so that you can comprehend along the way. So I'd say for me, even when I didn't have much money, I always found a way to invest in new communities invest in a coach, invest in someone that can support you in getting out of that level, because it's difficult to be there by yourself and to get out by yourself. Even me, I still have a coach, and my coach has a coach, and my coach's coach has a coach. So, and it just, even Tony Robbins still has a coach. Les Brown still has a coach.
Yeah.
So that's one of the greatest ways that I know how. Maybe there's a way to do it by yourself, but why would you want to do that? Even Michael Jordan had a coach. If he didn't, you'd see how far that would go when you don't have somebody that can pull out of you what you can't pull out of yourself. So I have my Get Unstuck program is designed specifically for people who don't have access. And it's great. It's on my website now, GarrainJones.com. And it's great for people that's going through what you're going through right now. So you can at least have direction.
100%. And you mentioned a couple times throughout the episode, this power of community. And I'm not going to lie to you, this morning when I was just preparing some last things for the interview, I got the chance to watch the video that you guys created for the Empowered Brotherhood community. And I want to talk about the new man that's emerging, because we've also talked on this podcast how there's this emergence of the divine feminine in our culture, in our consciousness. And usually in those conversations, the masculine is kind of left out and not really talked about too much. And what does the new man look like? Because we're so used to having this narrative of what, the father figure should look like, or people in power that are men are doing. And I feel like for people our age, my generation, we're looking up and we're trying to find role models of men that we want to model. And sometimes it's difficult because we don't know exactly where to look. I feel like what you guys are building with this community is a new type of man. And I would love if you could describe what that would look like. What would be your vision for the,
So
I remember you called it like the divine masculine, or a different name for it, the empowered man.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's the same man, new approach.
Okay.
So we're building men up so that man sees himself differently. But it's been since the beginning of time, the narration of man's got to do this, man's got to do that. So divine feminine, in my opinion, is when the masculine is accepted and loved, and the feminine is accepted and loved and embodied through action. It's when you can accept when you can accept the masculine, because masculine and feminine energies is inside of all of us. But when you can accept both and embody that through action, that shows up, especially inside of the woman's container, shows up as the divine feminine. But to me, divine feminine and divine masculine is the same thing. You're just speaking to two different audiences. So in the man's world, most men are raised to be tough. However, most men aren't raised to accept the feminine inside of them. And that's the colorful, and that's the flowing, and that's the spontaneity. And so most men have an issue truly showing and expressing themselves because they got to be tough. That, for me, doesn't work, because I love to be out there. I love to express myself, and I love to protect my family when I need to. So for me, divine masculine is the man that has the healthy masculine inside and has accepted the feminine inside and is not afraid to use it. And that's the divine. It's the combination of the two. And it's not often talked about because there's not many out there.
Yeah.
There's not many truly out there. So inside of Empowered Brotherhood, we pride ourselves on expression. We pride ourselves on being able to protect our family if we need to. We pride ourselves on just building up other men and being a safe space so that men can come and fulfill their needs as far as sharing what they really want to share without putting on a mask in the world. And it's not too many of those, because, a lot of men, they carry the ego, they carry the hurt, they carry the pain, they carry the shame, but they don't feel safe inside of their nervous system to come to a space and be like, you know what? I'm hurting. These are real tears. I'm struggling in my marriage. I'm struggling with my penis size. I'm struggling with money. I'm struggling with so many different things. And I just need a safe space to not have to carry it on my back the whole time. And that's what we are. We're the safe space that supports men in becoming a different version of a man. But it's still the same man. It's just a different approach. Yeah. And myself, Preston Smiles and Stefano Sifandos, we created and founded Empowered Brotherhood so that we could be that safe space for men to come and build and learn lessons. It's like church for man, to create just a new way for the world to experience man and a new way for man to experience himself inside of his own nervous system and inside of his own body. And at the same time, be strong enough to protect himself and his family and make an impact in the world. And right now, if you go to empoweredbrotherhood.com, M and the letter P, empoweredbrotherhood.com, or mpb.movement on Instagram, you'll see the work that we're doing in the world, and the transformation and changes that's happening in these men's lives is crazy. We're about to launch our global platform. So if you go online, you'll see everything, but I'm really excited about being a part of that project.
Yeah. I love what you guys are doing. And it's so inspiring. That video really hit me. So we'll put that in the link in the show notes so people can check that out. I wanted to ask you, so looking at you guys at this point have worked with thousands of men, and I'm sure you've extracted some patterns in what they're going through and how they've had these breakthroughs. Do you think you can mention some of those patterns that you've observed with these men that are having insane transformations?
I would tell you this. When you create a safe space for men to share what they're ashamed of, truly, that's all the opening you need. I've heard so many people share things that they're ashamed of, that they've never shared before. Things like, there's a man that maybe cheated on his wife, and he had carried shame, or maybe he was domestic violence, or maybe he was touched on when he was a little boy. There's a man that maybe had a sexual encounter with another man and he feels so ashamed. But when you come to an environment that says, no judgment, we're here, your shamed is loved too. Just that in itself is transformation. When you have to carry the weight of pain and shame, and then finally you release. So imagine being underwater for 3 minutes and somebody's not giving you breath. And then finally somebody comes with a container and somebody pulls you up and says, take a breath. That in itself is transformation, because you got to create space to make room for your next level, make room for your blessings. So one of the biggest things is how much shame men carry and won't tell a soul. And they don't even realize how much weight that it's weighing down on their life, their results, their money, their sexual intimacy is being blocked by shame, is being blocked by pain. So that don't even have to go into patterns. It's men carry a lot of shame. They carry a lot of stuff. They carry a lot of load. And we're just here to say, take the roof off your head. You don't have to carry it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And that shame, does it come from narratives of how society has told men they should be, or is it something different?
It's society of how they told society should be. Like society had painted what a real man is. Real men don't cry. Let me tell you something. Some of the strongest men ever that I've ever come across, they cry. Some of the weakest men stuff their tears down. Not saying all, but some of the weakest men that I've come across stuff their tears down and then put out a mask. Some of the strongest men are vulnerable. Like what it took for me to mention online that I was living in my car, that I wasn't what I made my life out to be because I was wearing a mask for the public, that I slept around with women, that I just put that out on social media. The strength that it took for me to be vulnerable and put myself out there like that. Very first message I got was from another man saying, I put the gun down when you shared your testimony. No strong-willed, strong man would have caused that ripple effect or reaction. But the real strong man is one who can be himself in any room, no matter what, without putting on a mask.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, I want to show you, I have this kind of quote board in my room. It says, being both soft and strong is a combination very few have mastered. So I have that as a reminder of like all of this that you're saying. I grew up, with a very strong masculine figure in my family who I've probably seen cry on one hand or two fingers. And like you, also just going off the astrological charts, I'm also a Cancer. I was born in July. And
July what?
July 17th.
I'm July 3rd.
Yeah. And I mean, with that, I mean, learning more about astrology and getting, a little bit deeper to have more self-awareness, I've learned that, emotions have been a huge factor in my life, since I can remember. And I remember when I was younger, every time I would get the urge to cry, I would literally do everything in my power to not let those tears out. And they would like come out because it's inevitable, but it's part of like how your body is biologically expressing. But I remember how hard it was to just keep that in, so no one outside of you would see weakness or see that soft, or as we're always told in high school when we're younger, like, oh, don't be a pussy or do that or do that. So that's huge. I feel like this concept that you were touching on is so important for men and also for women to understand where we're coming from. I feel like.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think it's important to do that kind of work. And you know how they say the man is the head of the household, and it's the masculine is the head of the household. It doesn't necessarily have to be man, but most masculinity is unhealthy. So imagine women who then start to duplicate men, because those, it sucks that the system was designed this way. The men's were getting the most high paying job and they were acting a certain way. And then you have these women that are copying, that over time were copying those men. They were copying the unhealthy masculine. So when you teach the masculine how to be healthy, how to be in ownership, how to confidence, how to not have to wear all the hats and like really put yourself out there in an unhealthy way, then say, for instance, moving forward, then if women are then duplicating the head of the household, they're duplicating the healthy energy. But ultimately, that healthy masculine is training the masculine inside of the woman to then start being healthy and not unhealthy.
That's
it's crazy. There's some.
It goes deep.
It's super deep.
And one of the things I learned from you in one of your podcast episodes was the importance, and I feel like this is a healthy masculine quality, just to give people some examples, is that of the commitment that you bring to your life. And I wanted to, unwrap that a little bit, the commitment and how it may relate to the resistance that we see in our life, or what keeps us stuck in certain things.
So can you ask that question again in a different way?
I feel like a healthy masculine quality that I've heard you speak upon has been the commitment aspect, just being committed to something. And I want to just unwrap that to give people an example of what that looks like practically. And also how it relates to the resistance we face in our life.
Well, according to your level of commitment, it unleashes the equal of its resistance. So people will make a commitment and not even realize that the resistance is a part of their commitment. It's all literally part of one. Mm. But they'll think it's like, oh my God, I want to be successful. But why does this keep happening to me? I got fired from my job, not even realizing that it was a part of your commitment. You make a commitment, you say a prayer, you cast a dream, you make a goal, and according to the size of it, it unlocks the equal of its resistance. Mm. So it's literally a part of it. You say you want to go to a championship, or you want to win the Super Bowl. You want to win the Super Bowl without practice, without working hard, without the resistance of what it takes to win a Super Bowl. That's why you won't get it. So if you understand the resistance is a part of the universal order of practice, you can then take the word resistance out and say, okay, now I'm ready for my practice. Okay. And this is how you can approach resistance differently. Be like, oh, I want to do this. I want to retire my mom. Yeah, but you got $2 in your account. So that's a big, lofty goal. So you must be trained to the capacity of your commitment. When I said I am committed to my wife, after being someone that messed around with all these girls and did all this other stuff, that was a lofty goal. So as soon as I made the commitment, all these girls that I used to deal with started messaging me, coming out of nowhere. Hey, I'm ready. But I was ready for the practice. I was like, oh, okay. Nope. So when you root yourself in your commitment and you stay grounded in your commitment, it has the ability to demagnetize the distractions. If you got a weak commitment, you'll get caught up in your distractions. So the reason why most people have difficulty committing is because they don't get the value on what they're missing out of when they get caught up in their distractions. But when you're just like, you know what, I am committed to my commitments and it means this much to me, and you stay grounded in that, then outside distractions, your training doesn't hold weight. When somebody's committed to going to the Olympics, they don't get caught up in the parties. They don't get caught up in these things. They're like, this is my commitment. So therefore, whatever it is that you're trying to do holds no weight, but you're still being trained through that process.
What's one of the biggest commitments that you have right now in your life?
To have an exceptional marriage.
I love that.
One, relationships are tough. And when you're in relationships with a powerful woman who knows who she is, it's 10 times tougher. So you got two really powerful people who don't just want a great marriage. We want an exceptional marriage. Now add a new baby who throws in, who literally completely shifts the whole flow. Figure it out. So my biggest commitment is being an exceptional dad, exceptional husband, having exceptional sex, having an exceptional marriage. But that is the person who made that goal, the person who's going to reach that goal is not the person who made that goal. I just made it. Now life is going to train me into the goal that I made. Yeah. So now I become that which I call myself, but I must earn my stripes along the way. So having an exceptional marriage, and this relationship ceremony with my wife, Blair, it's difficult, but it makes everything outside of our marriage so much easier because we want exceptional.
Yeah. And life in a way is just our initiation, right? Life is initiating us to these next levels. I love that. And I wanted to read actually one of my favorite quotes in your book, Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life. And it goes along what we're talking about. And you said, when you want big things out of life, you will be tested big. But just remember that God designs tests the ways he knows you best. And often the only way to get your attention is if the test is connected to your heart. If it wasn't connected to your heart, it wouldn't make a difference to you.
Yeah. It wouldn't get your attention. I'm walking down the street and there's a person right here to my right, and there's a person to my left. I don't know the person to my left. And then my friend is like right there and he's like talking. I'm going to pay attention to the person that I'm connected to. I might notice the person, but I'm not going to spend all my time when the person that I'm connected to is right there. So universe knows that. So it's like, I know you love your wife. I know you love your daughter. I know you love your job. So I'm going to do something in your job to get your attention. So you might get fired. You might get broken up with. There might be a fight. There might be a car wreck with the car that you love the most. But that's how I view life. So when it comes, I don't say, why is all this happening to me? I say, thank you, coach. I call God. I call the universal order. I call it coach.
Coach.
Because I'm an athlete. So it helps me relate to it better. I'm like, thank you, coach. Thank you for making me better. Thank you for making me wiser. Thank you for making me stronger. You have no idea what happens inside of your physiology when you use the words thank you. And gratitude is the glue that holds life together. So by you saying thank you to your challenges, thank you for making me better, you grow wings that support you in getting across the finish line of your challenges.
Yeah. My mom always told me also is that, life or universe or God will never give you a challenge that you don't have the resources to overcome in a stronger way. And that's so, so, so key. Like just knowing that anything that's going on in your life, you actually have everything within yourself to be able to step out and move towards the next level in your life, the next chapter, the next, phase that you want to play at. And I love that about your story. And it's a living example of that. So Garrain, I wanted to start wrapping this up for you. First of all, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? You mentioned your courses, your books. We'll link everything, but where's one place that you would send people to connect with you?
I would send people to my website, GarrainJones.com, or Instagram, Garrain at Garrain.Jones. You can find me there. My book is out. The really cool thing is I'm doing a rewrite on my book with new exercises, a slightly new cover, and my audiobook is about to come out in March, April-ish, with the new rewrite. And so people are going to have a different experience reading my book this time around. So it's cool to have the two different, because it can be like two different books with different exercises and a different layout and format of the book. And so I want you to get that, the programs, so you can have the direction for where you want to go. And then just stay in touch, man. Let me know. I love to hear people's wins. So anything that's shared on this podcast or through my books or my programs, hit me up, because I love reading wins when people are doing better in life because of something that has flowed through me to give to you. And I love seeing people's wins. So you guys have a powerful time and really take two things that you've learned from this, because you can get really caught up in, oh my God, I heard all these things. You're not going to do all these things.
Yeah,
take two or three things, that you learned today, and apply them to committed action. And then message me when you get a result from that.
Hell yeah. Amazing. You guys heard him. And Garrain, we usually end up every episode with the final trio. They're just these 3 questions that you can answer in a sentence or even a word, really rapid fire. But just to, close out the episode, the first one is, what does the next level look like for you? In other words, what summarizes your upgrade season, as you mentioned in your book?
Well, I don't know all those levels. That would be like asking a 5th grader who's never been to 6th grade, what does a 6th grade look like?
Yeah.
I don't know. However, I know there are some things that I want in my life, and the next 5 years, it's seeing $100 million in my bank and 10 times the impact outside of my bank into humanity. That's the next level for me. And being an awesome parent, like really, my first time around, I have a daughter that's 20 years old. My first time around, I was 22. I didn't know anything about self-growth, self-development. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't love who I was. So I'm still paying the price, and we're still paying the price for how, that space of relationship. And I'm learning so much now, which is giving me so much grace and love and healing for the 22-year-old version of me. I'm 42, about to be 43 in a couple months. But I'm having a lot of healing going on right now. So that next level is being able to approach parenting from a place of loving and not hating myself.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah. And the book is scattered with these epiphanies that you've had throughout your life that completely changed the course of your future. I wanted to know, in the last 12 months, what's one epiphany that you've had that is changing and altering where you're going towards now?
I put out a lot of these programs, and I connect with a lot of women. And I was wrestling around with the idea of like, man, it's so crazy. I should put out a course specifically for women, but I'm not a woman, so are they going to listen to me? And a huge breakthrough is I don't have to be a woman to be an ally for women's greatness. And so me being an ally and standing for women to have their rightful place in our society without being diminished just because they're a woman, I don't agree with that at all. So being an ally doesn't necessarily mean I have to be one of. That's a huge breakthrough that I had, because it's allowing me to experience my work in a completely different manner, especially when I'm in communion with women, or I'm working with women one-on-one or through retreats or workshops and whatnot.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And
Yep.
we opened with a opening statement for the young generations, and I was wondering if you would like to share any last closing statements for the future generation of leaders that are listening to this podcast, that are excited about the future, that want to make a big change. What would you leave them with today?
Stop, breathe, take your time. Doesn't mean you have to slow down, but taking your time allows you to be efficient so that you don't have to course correct 10 years from now. Stop, breathe, take your time, and stay locked in on your goals.
I love that. Garrain, appreciate you so much, brother. I'm
man.
so hyped that we got the chance to connect. I would love to come out to Austin, any of your events with
Come out, let me know.
Yes.
Let me know. Oh, by the way, in May, this is gonna be really good. So where do you live?
In Colombia for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
In May, we're doing Activate Your Alpha. So we have one of the highest rangers in the Army. We're partnering with a guy named Johnny, Sergeant Johnny. And we're doing Activate Your Alpha, and it's all about really building the masculine and building the man. So there's going to be crawling through mud. There's going to be all these different things that they learned in the Army, and that's going to be huge. So it's going to be on our website. You should come out, because it's going to be ridiculous. Like, you're going to go through difficulties, and we're going to push your edge. But I think every man should be a part of Activate Your Alpha, and you'll see it on Empowered Brotherhood in a few, but it's going to be really big. So I just want to put that out there, because that's the next retreat that we're doing for men in May.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You guys already know what to do. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, man.